The Galactic Council was a governing body unlike any other, composed of hundreds of species from across the galaxy, each more powerful and technologically advanced than the last. For centuries, this vast coalition had been the unchallenged force of order in the cosmos, a complex web of power that regulated every interaction between species, keeping the peace, by any means necessary. The Council prided itself on maintaining control over the galactic stage, ensuring that no species could rise too quickly or threaten the established balance. Humanity, however, was different. They were a species that had barely left their homeworld a few hundred years ago, and now they were rapidly expanding into the stars. Earth had become a beacon of innovation, a species growing at an unprecedented rate, mastering technologies that many other civilizations had taken millennia to develop. But despite their rapid progress, humanity remained new and somewhat unremarkable in the eyes of the older members of the Council. They had only recently been granted a seat at the table, and their presence in these hallowed halls was met with skepticism, if not outright disdain. To many of the Council's members, humans were an unknown quantity. They had made strides in space travel and technology, but the ancient species of the Council had seen empires rise and fall for eons. To them, humanity's sudden rise was nothing more than a curiosity. Few believed humans were a real threat, while others simply dismissed them as an arrogant species trying to play in a league far beyond their means. As the Council conducted its debates and its myriad affairs, the humans were often seen as an afterthought, a species whose rapid growth was merely a temporary anomaly, soon to be controlled or absorbed into the galactic order. The peacekeeping forces of the Council were a diverse group of elite soldiers from various alien species. These forces were dispatched to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, providing protection to colonies on the edge of Council-controlled space. Their mission was one of pacification, to quash rebellion and maintain the Council's view of peace. However, many human colonies on the Outer Rim viewed this as an invasion, a systematic undermining of their sovereignty. The presence of the peacekeepers was often met with resistance and anger, as humans felt increasingly like pawns in a larger political game, their autonomy disregarded for the sake of intergalactic diplomacy. The Council saw these human colonies as unruly, out of control, and in need of oversight. A recent string of attacks by a brutal, mysterious alien faction only served to deepen the divide. The Council moved quickly, sending peacekeeping forces to intervene in what they deemed a growing threat. These actions were meant to restore order, but to the humans, they were nothing short of a declaration of war. What was meant to be a defense operation was viewed by many as an overreach of the Council's power, a direct infringement upon human freedom. The most recent attack was devastating. A human colony on the Outer Rim, a key industrial world that produced critical resources for the human fleet, was decimated by an enemy far more brutal and advanced than anything the humans had previously encountered. The attackers, whose motives remained unclear, were merciless. Whole cities were wiped out, populations were enslaved, and countless lives were lost in a matter of days. The Council, once again, rushed to declare its intervention. But to the humans, the Council's actions were almost worse than the attack itself. A special summit was called, a gathering of the highest-ranking members of the Galactic Council to discuss the human situation. The stakes were high. This wasn't just about the fate of one colony. This was about the future of human independence in the galaxy. The Council had already decided that a diplomatic resolution was necessary, and human representatives were expected to accept whatever terms the Council offered. Some Council members spoke of using force to eliminate the attackers. Others pushed for negotiations and a show of strength that would discourage any future acts of rebellion or resistance. But the humans, furious, embittered, and more determined than ever to assert their place in the galaxy, would not accept the Council's terms. The human delegation consisted of the brightest minds and strongest leaders of the species, but among them stood General Marcus Storm, a man whose name alone carried weight. A decorated war hero with countless victories under his belt, Storm was known for his unshakable resolve and brilliant military strategy. To humans, he was a symbol of their strength. To the Council, he was a reminder of what could happen if they underestimated the human spirit. Storm had witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of the Council's interference, and he was no longer willing to let his people suffer in silence. The human position was clear: they did not need the Council's protection, nor did they want it. They were prepared to stand on their own, to defend their colonies, their world, and their people. It was not just a political stance, it was a matter of pride. The humans had built a thriving civilization, one that spanned across multiple star systems, and they had no intention of letting an outsider decide their fate. Tensions were running high in the council chamber as the summit convened. The Galactic Council was divided. Older species, who had seen wars fought and empires crumble, remained detached, confident that their advanced technology and resources would always keep them in power. Other members, eager to assert their dominance over humanity, were ready to push the humans to their breaking point. And then there were the few who saw the potential for collaboration, species who had watched humanity's rise with both admiration and concern. In the midst of these political maneuvers, the human delegation stood firm, awaiting their turn to speak. General Storm, calm yet filled with a simmering intensity, stood at the forefront, his gaze unwavering. As the council debated back and forth, he remained silent, his presence commanding attention. It was clear he was not here to negotiate, not here to beg for help or offer concessions. No, General Storm was here to make one thing abundantly clear: humanity would not be controlled. Humanity would not bend. The room fell silent as the debate reached its peak, with no clear resolution in sight. Storm stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. He spoke with authority, not raising his voice, but carrying a weight that made every word count. "You attacked our home?" In that moment, the room went dead silent. The council members, many of whom had seen civilizations fall and rise, were struck by the sheer audacity of the statement. It was not just the defense of a colony, it was a challenge to the very core of the council's power. Storm's words echoed, the significance of them reverberating through the chamber. It was a bold statement, one that declared not just the defense of a colony but the defense of an entire species and their most sacred place, Earth. The aliens in the room were stunned. Some were shocked into silence, while others exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time, they realized that humanity was not some insignificant player in the galactic stage. They were a force to be reckoned with. The humans were no longer the underdogs they had once appeared to be. They had been preparing for this moment, preparing for the day they would be forced to confront the galaxy's powers and defend their place among them. General Storm had drawn the line in the sand. He was not here to beg for mercy or to appease the council. He was here to assert humanity's strength. The air was thick with tension as General Marcus Storm stood among the human delegation, his mind focused entirely on what was about to unfold. The council chamber was a vast, intimidating space, filled with representatives from hundreds of species, each with their own agendas, each with their own designs for the future of the galaxy. And here, in the midst of it all, was humanity, a species still in its infancy compared to the ancient civilizations of the Council, yet with a fire and determination that none of these beings had anticipated. The humans had been pushing back against the Council's interventions for years. In every corner of human space, the presence of Council peacekeepers was seen as a reminder of the growing chasm between human independence and the Council's desire to impose its will. Each time the peacekeepers arrived, the humans had felt a pang of resentment, as though their sovereignty was being undermined by an outside force, no matter how noble the Council's intentions seemed. The message was clear: the Council viewed humanity as little more than a fledgling species that required oversight, protection, but at the cost of their freedom. The latest attack on a human colony only exacerbated this resentment. The mysterious alien faction that had launched a brutal strike against the human world had struck fear into the hearts of the Council. A species unknown to any of them, wielding weapons and tactics unlike anything seen before, had decimated one of the human outposts. The response from the Council was swift: more peacekeepers, more military intervention, more efforts to keep the peace. Yet to the humans, it felt like a slap in the face. Not only had they lost lives and resources, but the very foundation of their autonomy was being called into question. The Council's response, as it always had been, was to offer a solution, to impose its will, to protect the humans from further harm. But that solution always came with a price. The humans would be forced to submit, to fall in line with the Council's vision of order. And the humans were tired of it. They had suffered enough, and they were not willing to simply accept the Council's dictates any longer. In the days leading up to the summit, there had been whispers of revolt, of rising tensions. The human military, in particular, had become increasingly disillusioned with the idea of being told how to govern their own colonies. The leadership of the human fleet had been split on how to handle the growing crisis, with some advocating for a peaceful resolution, hoping that diplomacy could smooth over the rift. But others, like General Storm, had seen the situation for what it was, a fight for survival. Storm had been watching the Council from the shadows for years, observing the power dynamics, studying the decisions that had shaped the galaxy's course. He had seen how the older species dominated the dialogue, how the smaller ones were pushed aside, how the Council often operated in ways that benefited only the most powerful at the expense of the weak. And what troubled him most was the complete disregard for humanity's place in the galaxy. The Council had never taken them seriously, never truly considered the possibility that humanity might have something to offer beyond raw resources and military aid. But Storm knew better. He knew what humanity was capable of. For years, humanity had been quietly building its strength. The human fleet, under the radar of the Council, had been upgraded with new technologies that no one had ever expected. They had developed weapons, shields, and tactics that were unlike anything in the galactic arsenal. And while the rest of the galaxy had been focused on maintaining the status quo, the humans had been preparing for this very moment. The moment when they would need to prove to the galaxy that they were more than just an afterthought. That they were a force to be reckoned with. Storm had spent years in the shadows, watching, waiting. He had known that the time would come when the humans would have to make their stand. And when the Council sent its peacekeepers to quell the unrest on the Outer Rim, Storm knew it was the final straw. He had already made up his mind. He would not allow the Council to trample on human autonomy any longer. The stakes were higher than ever, and the message had to be clear. Humanity would not back down. The summit was set to be a turning point. There was no room for negotiation, no room for compromise. Storm was not here to plead for mercy. He was not here to offer solutions. He was here to make one thing abundantly clear. Humanity would no longer be subjugated. He had spent years preparing, building alliances within the human ranks, ensuring that the fleet would be ready when the time came. And now, as he stood on the brink of history, he felt the weight of the moment press down on him. The human delegation was ready. They had come to the Council to deliver a message, and it was not one of weakness or submission. The humans had grown tired of playing by the Council's rules. They had grown tired of being treated like children, constantly told what they could and couldn't do. And it was time for them to take control of their own destiny. As the summit approached, General Storm knew that the eyes of the galaxy were upon him. This was not just a meeting of politicians and diplomats. This was a defining moment for humanity. It was a moment where everything they had worked for, everything they had fought for, would either be validated or shattered. If the humans were to survive in this galaxy, they would need to prove that they had the strength to stand on their own, to chart their own course, and to defend what was theirs. The Council had always been a symbol of power and dominance, a monolithic institution that had shaped the galaxy's politics for eons. But Storm knew that it was built on a fragile foundation, one that could easily be shattered by a species willing to fight for its survival. He understood that this was the moment to prove that humanity was more than just a footnote in the galaxy's history. It was time to show the Council that they could no longer dictate the terms of humanity's future. The message was simple, and it was one that Storm was determined to make the entire galaxy understand. Humanity would not be cowed. They would not submit. They would not be bullied into compliance. If the Council wanted peace, it would have to come on humanity's terms, not theirs. And in that moment, with every eye in the chamber on him, Storm was ready to make that declaration. It would be a moment that would echo across the galaxy for centuries to come. Humanity was no longer a footnote. They were a force to be reckoned with. The moment General Marcus Storm stepped forward, A hush fell over the Galactic Council. His presence alone demanded attention, even though he wasn't physically imposing like some of the towering figures in the room. His reputation preceded him, a man of unwavering resolve and tactical brilliance. The atmosphere crackled with a tension that could be cut with a knife. The debate that had been raging among the alien representatives stopped abruptly, the weight of his arrival turning every conversation into silence. For years, humanity had been underestimated. The ancient species of the Council had assumed that the humans, despite their rapid rise, were nothing more than a passing curiosity. No one truly believed that humans could ever challenge the established order of the galaxy. They were a young species, unrefined, full of ambition but lacking the centuries of history and stability that the older species possessed. The idea that they could pose a threat, let alone stand toe-to-toe with the galactic powers, was laughable. And yet here they were, demanding a seat at the table, unwilling to bow to the Council's demands. The human delegation had been quiet until now, biding their time, letting the Council members argue over the fate of a single human colony. It was a move many would have called foolish, but it wasn't a mistake, it was deliberate. The Council had made a grave error in assuming that the humans were merely defending one of their colonies. This was not just about the Outer Rim, this was about a deeper issue, one that could no longer be ignored. It was about the fundamental right to exist on their own terms, to live without the interference of a governing body that had no regard for their autonomy. General Storm was no diplomat, no politician. He wasn't here to convince the Council with empty words or promises. His mission was singular, to make one statement that would reverberate across the galaxy. He was not here to beg for the survival of a single colony. He was here to declare that humanity would not be subjugated. He would not accept the role of a passive species, dependent on the whims of the Galactic Council for their future. The stakes were far too high. Storm stood tall, his voice calm but filled with a quiet intensity that made everyone in the room listen. "You attacked our home," he said, and the weight of those words seemed to shift the very air in the room. For the first time in history, a human had spoken so openly and directly to the heart of the Galactic Council. The statement wasn't just about the colony that had been destroyed. It was about the Earth, the birthplace of humanity, and their deep connection to it. The reaction in the chamber was immediate, though none of the alien representatives dared speak. There was no more debate, no more conversation about what the humans had lost. The focus was now squarely on Storm's words, and the implications they carried. For the first time, the Council realized the full extent of humanity's resolve. This wasn't just about a colony under attack, it was about a species willing to defend its very soul. Every alien leader in the room understood that when Storm said, "home," he wasn't referring to a single piece of land or a single world. He was speaking of Earth itself. The humans' connection to their homeworld was their foundation, the source of their strength and determination. Earth was more than just a planet, it was a symbol of everything humanity had achieved and everything they had yet to accomplish. The phrase resonated deeply, and every council member felt the force behind it. Storm wasn't done. He wasn't here to make empty threats or to offer half-hearted words. "We've been preparing for this," he continued. "While you've been busy keeping your so-called peace, we've been building our strength." He paused for a moment, letting the weight of his statement settle in. "Humanity is no longer a species you can afford to ignore. Our fleet is ready. Our technology is advanced. Our resolve is unbreakable." The council's members shifted uneasily in their seats. The quiet murmurs began, but it was clear that they hadn't anticipated such a blunt statement from a species they had so easily dismissed. The humans were no longer a passing curiosity. They were a threat to the balance the council had worked so hard to maintain. Storm's words were not empty, they were backed by the full force of humanity's might. The humans had been preparing for this moment, building their technology in secret, knowing that the day would come when the council would push them too far. Storm had watched from the sidelines, taking in the rise of humanity with the knowledge that their time would come to stand their ground. And now, that time had arrived. The humans had spent years developing advanced technologies, weaponry, shields, and starships that surpassed anything the council had seen. These weren't just small upgrades. These were entirely new designs, born out of necessity, forged by a species that refused to accept defeat. The human fleet, once viewed as a collection of scattered ships and weak colonies, was now a force capable of challenging the might of any galactic power. It was a fleet that had been built in secrecy, away from the prying eyes of the Council. And now, Storm was ready to show them what humanity was truly capable of. The silence in the room grew oppressive as Storm revealed the truth. The Council had always assumed that humanity was a species with potential but no real power. They had thought the humans were too disorganized, too young to pose any threat to the established order. But the truth was, the humans had always been a sleeping giant, waiting for the right moment to rise. It was in that moment that the full weight of humanity's power began to dawn on the Council. They had no idea what they had unleashed by pushing humanity this far. The fear, the respect, and the awe that now filled the room were palpable. They had made the mistake of thinking humanity would be passive, that they would simply bend to the will of the Council. But now, they saw the truth: humanity would not be controlled. Storm's voice cut through the tension, his next words coming with a quiet finality. "We don't need your protection. We never did. If you want peace, we can make that happen. But it will be on our terms. You'll no longer dictate the fate of humanity." It was a moment of reckoning, not just for the Council, but for the entire galaxy. The humans had drawn a line in the sand, and they were not going to retreat. The Council's leaders, once so confident in their power, now found themselves at a crossroads. The threat humanity posed was real, and it was unlike anything they had ever encountered before. Storm's declaration had not only made a statement to the Council, it had sent a message to the galaxy. Humanity was no longer the underdog, the fledgling species trying to prove itself. It was now a force in its own right, and the rest of the galaxy would have to reckon with that fact. As the Council sat in stunned silence, General Marcus Storm knew that this was only the beginning. The battle for humanity's future was just getting started. But one thing was clear: humanity would never again be overlooked or underestimated. The days of the Council ruling without challenge were over. The moment the words, "You attacked our home," echoed through the Council chamber, the air shifted. The realization of what Storm had just declared settled over every representative present. Humanity had drawn a line in the sand, and the consequences of crossing it were not to be taken lightly. For the first time, the Galactic Council understood that the humans were no longer a mere curiosity. They were a force capable of shaping the future of the galaxy. The Council, long accustomed to settling disputes with power and influence, had always assumed that the smaller species would comply with its dictates. But humans had proved to be different. General Storm's declaration wasn't just about one human colony. It was about Earth. It was about humanity's entire way of life, their very existence in a galaxy that had seen countless species come and go. The Council had assumed that humans would fall in line, that they would accept whatever terms were handed to them. Instead, they had just witnessed the birth of a new kind of power. Storm's voice had been calm, but his words carried the weight of an entire species behind them. He wasn't just speaking for the humans who had suffered at the hands of the Council's peacekeepers. He was speaking for every man, woman, and child on Earth and the farthest reaches of human space. They would not stand idly by while their home was threatened. Earth had always been more than just a planet to the humans. It was their origin, their identity, their very soul. And now, with the fate of their home at stake, humanity had made it clear that it would not back down. As the shock of Storm's declaration rippled through the room, the Council was forced to confront a truth they had long overlooked. Humanity was no longer a species they could control or ignore. The humans had spent years quietly building their strength. The fleet that had once been scattered and disjointed was now a unified force, equipped with technology and firepower that rivaled some of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. It wasn't just their military might that made them dangerous, though. It was their ingenuity, their ability to adapt, and their sheer determination. While the older species of the Council had been focused on maintaining their own power, humanity had been quietly preparing for the moment when they would no longer accept the status quo. They had been building ships, developing weapons, and refining strategies that no one had anticipated. Storm had been part of that effort, quietly assembling a military that would not only defend humanity's home but would challenge the very foundation of the Council's authority. The moment Storm revealed the full extent of humanity's power, the gravity of the situation became clear. The fleet was no longer just a symbol of humanity's ambition, it was a direct challenge to the Galactic Council's supremacy. The weapons the humans had developed, the tactics they had perfected, were designed with one goal in mind: to protect Earth and its colonies from anyone who dared threaten them, including the Council itself. For the first time, the Council's peacekeepers, once seen as an unstoppable force, now seemed inadequate. The humans had developed technologies that far surpassed the standards the Council had set. Shields that could withstand devastating attacks, weapons that could obliterate entire fleets in seconds, and ships that could outmaneuver any opposition. Humanity's technological leap had taken the Council by surprise, and they were scrambling to reassess their strategies. The Galactic Council had long been the gatekeeper of peace in the galaxy, but they were facing a new reality, one where peace was no longer something they could impose. The humans were no longer passive subjects of the Council's will. They were now active players in the galaxy, capable of defending their sovereignty and challenging the established order. The days of easy control were over. Storm had made it clear that the humans would not simply accept what was handed to them. If the Council wanted peace, they would have to offer it on humanity's terms. There would be no more interference in human affairs. There would be no more treating Earth and its colonies like pawns in a galactic game. Humanity would not bow to the Council's will. As the Council members sat in stunned silence, the weight of the moment was impossible to ignore. Some of the alien species, particularly those that had long held power within the Council, began to fear the implications of Storm's words. What if humanity's rise continued unchecked? What if they became the dominant force in the galaxy, challenging the delicate balance of power that had been in place for eons? Storm's declaration had set the stage for something that none of the Council had expected, a confrontation that would determine the future of the galaxy. The humans had shown that they were not afraid to fight for their place in the universe, and they had the means to do so. The Council would have to decide whether they would continue to oppose humanity or find a way to coexist with this new, powerful force. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and it was clear that humanity was now a central player. The next steps would not be easy. Storm knew that the Council would not simply let go of its control without a fight. But he also knew that humanity had the strength to back up its claims. The battle for Earth's future had only just begun, and the humans were ready for whatever came next. As Storm left the chamber, his mind was already focused on the task ahead. The humans had proven that they would not be intimidated, but the real test was still to come. The Council had been shaken, but their response would define the next chapter in the story of humanity's rise. The war for Earth's sovereignty was far from over, and Storm was prepared to lead his people through it, no matter the cost. But humanity had already won a crucial victory. They had asserted their place in the galaxy, and no one, least of all the Galactic Council, could ever forget the day when a human general stood before them and declared that Earth was no longer a colony to be controlled. It was a home, and humanity would fight to protect it at any cost.